Call this meeting of the Person County Board of County Commissioners to order. If I could get Commissioner Powell to do our invocation.
If you desire, pray with me, please. Heavenly Father and Almighty God, we thank you for this opportunity of being here tonight to conduct the business of the county. And Father, help us each to realize our inadequacies and in your power, guide our thoughts, our deeds, that it might be the best for our county. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Could I get Commissioner Puryear to lead us in it?
Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any representatives here from the representing the Partnership for Children? Would you mind coming up? Thank you. Proclamation by the Person County Board of Commissioners on the Week of the Young Child. Whereas the Person County Partnership for Children and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children, are celebrating the Week of the Young Child, April 16th to 20th, 2018. And whereas by calling attention to the need of the high quality early childhood services for all children and families within our community and state, these groups hope to improve the quality and availability of such services. And whereas the future of Person County depends on the quality of the early childhood experiences provided by the young children today, now therefore the Person County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of April 16th through 20th, 2018 as the Week of the Young Child in Person County, and urge all citizens to recognize the support and the needs of the children of Person County. Adopted this day, the 9th day of April, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your support for our young children, and please join us at the parade that week and the breakfast that to hear more great things about young children.
All right. Thank you. Are there any discussions or adjustments of the agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
We do have an agenda adjustment.
I just started to say
Sorry.
something about and Ms. York, you may want to go ahead with that?
Sure, Commissioners. I would like to ask you for your consideration to add an agenda item related to clarifying next year's funding for the volunteer fire departments.
And I would suggest that being, since it's an ongoing discussion under unfinished business, is that appropriate? Would that work?
I'd entertain a motion to put it as item number 8B, VFD funding under unfinished business.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, I got a little bit out of whack here, and we did the recognition before that, but we're moving on. We have a public hearing. We have a resolution declaring its intent to sell Person County Health and Hospice Agency. I would entertain a motion to open into public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion to enter into public hearing. Is there any public comment? Is there any comment? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Ron Aycock.
Mr. Chairman and board members, you have previously discussed and indicated your interest in exploring the sale of the county hospice and home health. In order to do so, the law requires a very complicated process to go through and ensure that there is in fact a market, to ensure that the people of Person County currently receiving services through those agencies continue to receive those services, and to assure that there is a good price that you might get. This is the first step of a long process to determine whether or not you want to sell, and if so, to whom and at what price. The resolution states all those intents and starts the process should you adopt it.
Any questions for Mr. Aycock? Hearing no questions from Mr. Aycock, we have a public comment period. Deborah Tenen, please step forward, state your name and your address.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Tenen. My address is 811 North Main Street, Apartment C, Roxborough, North Carolina, 27573. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to talk to you a little bit about the hospice that we have at Person County. I've been at the Home Health and Hospice, actually in that position as a social worker for the last 6 years, but I've been at Person County government for the last 25. So I want to say that consider before you consider what you're considering to go ahead and think about the people that we serve. We serve Person County folk, and we have been seeing people, and they really enjoy us coming in because sometimes they know us. They know who we were, what our families were, those kinds of things. And the kind of support that we give these people is a on the spot time, which means if you were to get an agency from out of town, it would take at least 35 to 45 or an hour or two to get to these people. And when you have a person that is dying or needs some type of medication that they can't get, and that's why you call that hospice nurses, because you need them to come out and kind of give you some support, of course, while your loved one is passing away and you don't know what else to do, and you can get someone on the phone as quickly as possible. And before you consider that, also think about the employees that are employed there. We have not only a social worker myself, we have nurses, we have a chaplain, we also have the CNAs. Those folks are first line folks who go out and really take good care of these patients. And when they call, we have building folks, and we have physical therapy, and we have occupational therapists, and we have also folks that are our managers. And I'm telling you, these families, they become our families. I just want you guys to know that when you're considering to bring up this adoption. And I just say thank you for my time.
Thank you, Ms. Tennant.
Thank you.
Michelle White.
Hello. My name is Michelle White, and I live at 5030 Samora Road in Roxborough, 27574. Okay, thank you. I am currently serving as the nursing manager and supervisor of Home Health and Hospice, as well as our clinic in the health department, and I also am over preparedness and safety for the health department as well. I have opposition to your intent to sell or the consideration to do so, and I would like to share some of these points with you. Our hospice has been profitable every year except for one, and that was in 2016. Hospice has been so profitable that it covered the losses in our home health agency for 4 years and still remained profitable. Through the last year, our hospice was the #1 hospice in Person County. People chose us more than any other hospice in this county. We are not asking to save home health. We would respectfully request the opportunity to return our hospice to that #1 position, not through growth or additional positions, but through quality improvement. 9 county positions would be eliminated if hospice closes. Hospice provides aid to clients and ongoing mental health support to clients' families in a world where mental health is something that we have far too little of already. Private hospices can cap the percentage of indigent or poor payer sources where public organizations such as ourselves do not. We take care of our Person County citizens and even those that live in the border of our Person County. It is my belief as well that our Board of Health is in full support of our hospice continuing as a county program. With increasing requests for county dollars, hospice can be self-sufficient and even help fund other county programs. Another county health department similarly has faced a situation such as this and did sell or close their home health and improve the quality of their hospice program, focusing on their hospice program. Today, they are super profitable and they are extremely excited and pleased with their decision to concentrate on the quality and focusing on their hospice, because it too was something that was profitable and their home health was actually sucking that program. The hospice staff is vital to emergency plans as shelter staff and to fulfill the duties of the Strategic National Stockpile, which is also a public health program and that is mandated by the state for us to actually oversee. In doing so, you will cut the staff and capabilities that we have to support that program. With trends to cut federal and state funding, locals will have to rely more on their own capabilities and revenues or continue to make additional service cuts in programs that aren't able to provide self-sufficiency. There is never anything wrong or hurting to have a nonprofit that makes money and covers the cost of employees and those employees that are county citizens. After initial profit from sale or both of home health and hospice, there will be a greater monetary demand on the county for other state mandated public health programs. And the imagined savings would only end in loss in less than 8 years. I fear a domino effect as a response to that, and where other programs would also be cut and other job losses may ensue. We welcome anyone to come to our health department to understand more about these facts and these considerations that I've listed here for you today, to support them through data, question, answer sessions, whatever. We would open our doors to any commissioner and invite them to come and speak with us. And that is all that I have to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. That ends the public comment period for the people who were signed up to speak. Is there any questions or comments?
9 employees Ms. Smith spoke of, are they full-time or some are part-time or?
They're full-time right now.
Any further questions for staff or anyone who spoke? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to go into closed public hearing.
So moved.
Got a motion on the table to close public hearing. Is there any further public comment? Any further comment? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, consideration to adopt a resolution declaring its intent to sell Person County Health and Hospice Agency. You gentlemen have heard the comments before you. We've discussed this on previous occasions. What is the intent of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer a motion to keep hospice and offer home health for sale, and reword this to show that.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to keep hospice and sell home health. Is there any discussion related to this?
But since I made the motion, I will comment. I guess I worked over there at the health department from probably in the 70s until in the late 90s, and I've always, oddly enough, always worked pretty close to where the home health hospice office was at, and they did not have hospice to start with. They had home health, and I think they had 2 nurses back in the 70s, and they all drove their own vehicles back in, went all out in the county and did all kinds of things, but there was no public home health at that time. So it started because there was a need for it, and it started because nobody else offered it. And as it slowly grew, private saw a profit in it. Maybe, it became more federal funds and more state funds available for home health, And then, of course, they finally started hospice. Home health was actually acting as hospice a lot of times. They had people that were reaching the end of their life, and a lot of the families just didn't really know what to do. So home health stepped in, and finally they came up with hospice, and they started that. And probably one of the best hospice programs in, I know it was in Person County, but it was probably one of the best ones in the state. I worked at several health departments, but they had an excellent department over there. I don't know what financial problems they ran into with home health over here, but it seems to be a common problem across the state with the home health part. So but the hospice is serving a clientele, and they're local people, as the lady said. And if your family's in that position, you need somebody there with you. And then if something does happen, if you've got somebody that has a heart attack, or they have something else, they have some other disease, and you can pick the phone up and they can come down and take care of all of the things that you're too shook up to take care of. I think it's important. And I understand that private is creeping in on this, but I also understand, I would feel sorry for the fact that sometimes people say government ought not to be what private can run, but in this case, private only came in after government made it work like it ought to work. And it's not just for the employees over there. They're good people over there, but this is for the people that are getting this service. And I think the county ought to do all they can to keep the hospice program. I understand that home health has got competition out there, and private is doing that. I haven't got a problem with that. But as far as the hospice part goes, I feel like we ought to try to keep that if we can. I will say this, I'm going to go so far as to say this, I understand that I don't know which agency it was in. You got to look at the finances. You are going to have somebody at either the hospital or at the other facilities in this county. You may have to hire another employee, but you're going to have somebody there that when the family is there and the doctor or the nurse or somebody recommends hospice, that your name gets put in the pot. You can't let them use one of these big mega hospitals or these other things, and they got fine folks working there, but like she said, they may be 30 minutes before they get you. You need them in 10 if you get them that in. You're going to have to market it. So if you keep it, you're going to have to make some changes over there. But I would recommend that you at least have an opportunity to see where it works. If it don't work, then we'll be right back here doing this again. But that's why I made that motion. I think it's a possibility, and I think hospice can support itself.
What's the breakdown in the two? The difference in the two?
In
Numbers
terms of-
wise, percentage wise, service wise, I don't know how to break it down. I've always
There,
heard
that would probably be a question best answered by Janet Clayton, your health director. I can tell you the number of patients that hospice has now, only because that's a recent number she has shared with me. There are 5 hospice patients. There are many more home health patients. Happy to answer what I know, but Janet is definitely the expert in that area. The county does put in approximately $1.2 million to support the health department as a whole. We can't tell you exactly what portion goes into home health or what portion goes into hospice, because those are not separate budgets. It's one budget for the health department. There is a large revenue that comes in to support hospice, but I think it's a bit misleading to say that hospice is self-supporting. They made approximately $13,000 last year. You can imagine the cost of the salary of one full-time employee that nowhere near covers our costs. So they are bringing in revenue. It is being infused across the health department to support various positions and needs and supplies, but it is not a separate budget, so I can't give you a clear picture of exactly, what goes for hospice. But again, this is Janet's area, and she can answer those questions better.
Well, actually, the health department budget, what you see is broken down into 2 budgets. One is public health and one is environmental health. Internally, we break down the public health budget into approximately 20 different budgets for each program. Last year, the county contributed roughly $230-some thousand to the home health program. Hospice did not receive any county funding last year. Hospice made $13,000, as County Manager Gore just stated. There has only been 1 year that hospice did not make a profit of any amount, and that was in 2016. We made some changes, and it did come back. The other piece is home health and hospice. That program requires considerable staff investment of time. Those patients you have to see more frequently. There's a more in-depth training, whereas with hospice it's a different type of care and a different type of patient and training. And those allowing staff to take on only hospice instead of both programs would allow for hospice to be a more efficient program as well.
What's your total budget, Janet?
My total budget,
State, federal, local, all together?
it's roughly $4 million, 3.9 I believe.
All right, given that hospice made 13 grand, I would assume that it is, your budget has to be balanced, so we spent you had $100,000 in expenditures, $113,000 in revenue, just using that as an example. So that would that mean that it is self-sufficient since you made $13,000?
Yes, because we brought in our revenue in hospice last year. We are budgeting approximately $700,000. That's after. I mean, that's so when you take away, and home health brought in revenue of roughly $200,000. So when you take away both programs, you're also taking away that almost $1 million in revenue.
You said that the county, that hospice received no county funding last year, is that correct? But you had county employees run the hospice program.
Yes, we did, but the hospice program, their time is paid for by hospice revenues. Because each employee fills out what we call a time study, so their time is billed to that program. So whatever dollars come into that program covers those employees. That's how they're billed out. It's just like in private industry. If you're making a certain widget, the cost of that employee making that widget is billed to that product. It's the same way in the health department for both sides, personal health and home health and hospice.
So whatever the number was to run hospice last year, you brought that in plus $13,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Any further questions? Comments?
Mr. Chairman, the reason that we had this public hearing was to hear from the public regarding the possible intent for this resolution, and we were extended an offer by, I believe you were the director of hospice, is that correct? Manager of hospice, and you invited us, any commissioner, to come and speak with you and talk about opportunities. Given that, being that there's an open invitation, I would ask Commissioner Clayton if he would consider to suspend his motion and we table this, and I, for one, would like to hear you out, and I'm not saying it's gonna change my mind one way or the other, but I do want to hear you out, and if you want to give us the opportunity, I'd be glad to meet with you before we come to a decision on this.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to bring up is this. In no way, we'll have another vote if I'm clear on this. I want to make sure with Mr. Aycock, but this is just an intent to sell, and it's to gather information to get to that point. If we get to the point where we have an offer on the table, there will be another vote to make a decision on whether or not we sell or not. So I understand both positions and I sympathize with both decisions, but the decision today, we can do our due diligence and we can continue to work with both the health department and the person that is making an offer to sell during the period of time that it takes for us to make a decision, and we do not have to vote on the sale of this property or this entity until we get bids back. So we've got until about July or August. So I would like to say that if we would, hearing Commissioner Puryear and Commissioner Clayton discuss this, if we would move forward with the resolution, but wait until we have all the facts and we can sit with the health department, listen to the comments, concerns, and then later, as we get both sides, both the independent contractor and the health department side, then we make a decision at that time. So that's my comment, and I'll leave it to the board to make a decision. We have a proposal on the board. We have a request to change the proposal.
Well, when we discussed this before, I understood it exactly the way you explained it, that we were going to maybe get bids out there to see what it would sell for, and then we would have a vote again to sell.
That's
But
correct.
when I read this tonight, or the other day, that said declaring its intent to sell, then that was going to be my question before I voted tonight, because it is not my intent to say that I'm going to sell or not sell tonight, that I thought we were just only looking to open for bids. Now, if you go through with this, given Commissioner Clayton's, you're not going to be getting bids with separate how much you want to buy hospice for, or how much you want to buy home health. You're, with this resolution, you're combining them both.
That's
So
right.
someone will be showing you bids to purchase both of them.
That's
Which
correct.
would negate
That's right.
what Commissioner Clayton is trying to do.
That's right. So the process is to hold a public hearing to hear from the public in the beginning, go through the process with the consultant who will put together a RFP, put it out to market. They have a certain amount of time to bring back proposals. The consultant will bring those to you for your review. You might get 0, you might get multiple proposals, you don't know. You don't have to take any. You can then enter into negotiations to make it more desirable if that's, you know, the interest of the board. But this in no way commits you to a sale of either programs. For as far as we know at this point, we don't know what the offers will even look like. We have heard that the programs that sold both services together got better offers because hospice is the one that has the potential to be more lucrative than the home health. So it has been the recommendation to bundle these two together in one sale. However, you can negotiate later after you have the proposals in hand, should you decide at that point that you would indeed like to keep one of the programs over the other.
So what's the pleasure of the board? We could actually open it up to the independent agent to do an RFP for one or both, if that would be the desire of the board.
Mr. Chairman, you got a motion on the floor to only open it up to home health.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, or is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of just selling home health and not hospice, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? No. All right, so hearing that the proposal did, or the motion did not carry, is there any further intent?
Make a motion table May 7th.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to table it to May 7th. Is there any further discussion?
It gives Commissioner Puryear the opportunity to go by, meet with staff.
Well, it gives every commissioner the opportunity to meet.
I've served on the board for about 10 years, but I'll go.
I worked there for about 30.
Well,
All right.
When is the report due from?
There's a complicated timeline, but it, the delay will just push it, out another month. So we had intended to get bids back, I think, somewhere in the August-September timeframe. Do you have the calendar? This would put it now more into the
Either way, we would be
October.
still in the next fiscal year, so it's not like we were trying to get them off of, if we were going to sell it, it's
Correct.
not like we're trying to get them off the books by July 1.
No.
That's right.
So either way, we'll be in the next budget year.
Your next meeting in May, not your next meeting, your meeting in May is May 21st. The meeting on the 7th has been canceled due to
Okay, is
the
that
primary.
in the morning? Is that a
Yes.
morning meeting?
Yes.
Well, given this was a public hearing tonight, people had opportunity to come. I'm fine with having it in the morning. So I amend my motion to May 21st.
Okay. We have a motion on the table to delay the public hearing, vote and intent to sell until May 21st. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Ayes have it. Public hearing, number 4, consideration of whether to finance or a portion of the cost of various projects and making a related determination. I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing related to this.
So moved.
Okay, have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Miss Amy?
The purpose of this public hearing is to consider, A, whether this board should approve a proposed installment financing agreement to finance a portion of the cost of the construction of 2 public safety communication towers, the purchase and installation of related facilities and equipment, as well as building improvements to Huck Sansbury Gym, a fire alarm upgrade and the replacement of rooftop units at Northern Middle School, roofing replacement for early intervention, cooling tower replacements for Helena and Stories Creek Elementary Schools, and heating and cooling valve replacements at South Elementary. And B, whether the county should acquire from the Board of Education an interest in the real and personal property included in the Northern Middle School project for use by the Person County Schools. The financing proceeds are set not to exceed $4.75 million for these projects, with the remaining cost to be sourced from local contingency funds in the general fund. The county will secure the repayment of the financing by pledging Northern Middle School as collateral for the financing. A proposal to finance a portion of the cost of this project for $4.4 million was received from BB&T in response to the county's RFP, which was sent to a number of financial institutions and appears to be the most favorable of proposals received by the county for this purpose. The bid TAD summary comparing the proposals from 3 responding lenders was included in your packet for your review. BB&T provides the most favorable offer for a 15-year term at a fixed interest rate of 3.51%, which equated to a lower average annual debt payment of $367,417. The other 2 proposals were highly dissimilar in that one could not extend their term beyond 10 years, causing the average yearly debt payment to be $157,000 more each year than BB&T's average payment. And the other could only offer a fixed rate that was subject to change if the federal corporate income tax changed, causing greater risk to the rate that the county would be able to maintain. After the public hearing is closed, it is requested that the board consider making the following determinations. 1, to proceed with the proposed financing and approve on a preliminary basis the proposal to finance a portion of the cost of the project in an amount not to exceed $4,750,000. 2, to authorize the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, the county manager, and the finance director of the county to negotiate further with the approved lender the terms of the proposal as they consider to be necessary and advisable. And 3, to acquire from the Board of Education an interest in the real and personal property included in the Northern Middle School project and the improvements thereon for use by the Person County Schools. It is requested now that this public hearing be held for the board's consideration and that approval of the necessary determinations be made after the public hearing is closed.
Anybody have any questions for Amy?
So these projects grouped together just because we need to do a financing, or are they coming forth in our CIP, or are they just drastically need to be done? I mean, we developed this CIP so we could somewhat pay as we go and not just do a borrowing every time we wanted to.
That's true. The projects are included in that CIP report that are to be financed. They're highlighted in yellow. These are projects that the schools deemed critical. We could have deferred them further, but they were causing real maintenance issues for the schools. We knew that we really didn't have any other option to propose a financing for the tower project due to the amount. So it was decided when they asked for those projects in the CIP, we determined that it might be a better strategy to include those in with the financing, since we were doing that for the towers anyway.
So so the schools obviously listed this or chose these?
Yes.
So my understanding is we're gonna get a more favorable outcome on the financing based on bundling it with the tower project.
Yes, it is very potential that we knew that when we increased that amount, we would entice more lenders to bid on the project, and we would probably get a more favorable rate because of the larger amount.
And we'll get ahead of the CIP plan. It's not adding to the CIP plan.
No, it's actually taking projects off of future years where we would have had to have deferred it.
So the only reason I asked about the order is because if I look in here and see that Southern Middle School needs a fire alarm system because it's inadequate, and we're doing in this financing one for Northern because it's inadequate, why wouldn't we be doing a fire alarm system for Southern as well?
We did talk with the schools at length about each of their projects. Southern Middle School fire alarms, Sybil and I did talk with them about that, and as do you remember?
Dr. Peterson is here as well.
Dr. Peterson,
Yes, sir.
would you like to speak on that?
It's my understanding that the southern fire system meets current regulation. While the northern does, there are some needs that we need to do to upgrade the middle as a result of the renovation that we just completed last week.
So in your opinion, the recommendation that is before the board is supported by the school system?
Absolutely, projects, and we appreciate your support with it.
All right, thank you. Any further questions for Amy? At this time, we have a resident who's willing to speak on public comment in favor of. Mr. Lee Woodall, would you come forward and state your address and comment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lee Woodall. I reside at 200 Reed Drive in Roxborough. And I think Amy has put together a very reasonable proposal for financing of the cell towers and the communication equipment that's required. And I certainly think that her proposal should be approved. But when I was reading the newspaper the other day about what was included in some of this deliberation that the county is going through now with the budget process, it struck me that there is another source of revenue that we are not tapping that would really put this county ahead of some of our neighbors if we could tap this source. And what I'm talking about is landfill revenue. We signed the contract with, to get the Upper Piedmont going back in 1996. And that was a volume that was agreed to at that time of about 600 tons per day. The volume of a Subtitle D landfill typically is around 2,000. The optimum volume would be 2,000 tons per day. And this is how we would be able to increase the revenue to our county. It would be non-tax revenue coming to us, and that non-tax revenue could be spent for so many good things. These cell towers, that's one example. Of course, what I've heard most recently is the volunteer fire departments and their need for additional funding. That revenue could be used for items like that, and it's just a matter of getting to the negotiating table and having some reasonable minds agreed to what needed to be done. So that's what I would encourage you to be looking at. In addition to this installment financing, the stream that could be made available to the county could be put to so many worthwhile uses, and it would be able to allow us to do things that maybe some of our neighbor counties are not able to do now. It would give us a leg up in the economic development recruiting game, and in my opinion, that's so important for us to consider. I think the time is right to capitalize on the landfill revenue, and I would encourage you to proceed to do what needs to be done. We almost were there about a year and a half ago, but didn't quite make it. We need to give that effort reinvigorated means to try to come to a conclusion here. And I really think that this special source is something that is very unique to Person County, and we need to capitalize on this. Appreciate you allowing me to speak, and thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. We have no one else signed up to speak. Are there any questions or comments before we close public hearing? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion on the table. Is there any comments, concerns? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, public hearing is closed. Item number 5, consideration to approve proposed installment financing agreement for the portion of the cost of various projects to acquire certain school property. What is the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move to recuse myself from this discussion and the vote, being that the proposed financer is my employer.
Do you have more than a majority shareholder in BB&T?
I'm not sure what the majority shareholder has, sir.
Okay. I think if Mr. Lawyer, to be able to recuse, he has to have a majority shareholder or a majority interest in the corporation doing business with Person County.
A commissioner is not disqualified unless they have at least a 10% ownership interest in the business. So a commissioner absent 10% would not be disqualified. There would not be any legal prohibition. The question for the board is, the commissioner is able to request the board to release him from the obligation to vote, but he is not legally required not to vote.
Is that for the rest of the night or just this item?
Say this item, that's up to this board.
So hearing that, what's your proposal?
I still move to recuse myself, sir.
All right. Okay, all in favor of Kyle recusing himself, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, ayes have it. Consideration to approve proposed installment financing for various projects to acquire certain school properties. Any further comments?
Move for approval.
All right, we got a motion on the table for approval. Is there any further comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Kyle. Public hearing, request to add Cotton Pickin Trail to a private roadway database of roadway names used for 911 dispatching. I'd entertain a motion to open public hearing.
So moved.
All right. Thought I was out there on the limb by myself there for a minute. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Ms. Vaughn.
Good evening. I'm here before you today to present a private roadway which will be located off of Thomas Store Road. The citizens have elected to have this roadway named to their property in advance of construction of their homes. The name that they chose was Cotton Pickin Trail, which is compliant with our ordinance. The road will not affect any adjacent property owners or existing addresses. And as you all know, this does require a public hearing be held on the matter. And my recommendation is to approve the recommended roadway name.
Are there any questions for Ms. Vaughn? Hearing no questions, Misty Clark, please step to the podium and state your name, address, and your favor of this proposal.
Misty Clark. I'm currently at 407 Davis Road in Hillsborough, North Carolina, but I will be moving to this road whenever we get our houses built out here. The name is kind of weird, I know, but it's just something that my grandpa used to always say, like, you know, like older men and stuff like that, you know, older people, they are like cotton picking something, or, you know, like cotton picking road, you know, and he loved stuff like that, and it's just something to kind of remember him by. Like the family just thought it would be pretty neat to have, and that's why we chose it.
All right. Any questions?
Move to come out of public hearing.
I got a motion to come out of public hearing. Is there any further discussion? Hear none. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Item number 7, consideration to grant or deny a request to add Cotton Picking Trail, a private roadway.
I move the name is Cotton Picking Road, Cotton Picking Trail.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Informal comment period. We have no one for informal comment period. So, discussion and adjustment of and approval of the consent agenda. Is there any discussions, adjustments?
Move for approval.
All right. Here no discussions or adjustments. We have a motion on the table to approve. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, ayes have it. Unfinished business, item number 8B, VFD funding. Ms. Heidi York.
Good evening, Commissioners. I will just quickly introduce this item for you all as Russell is going to lead the discussion with you. But you'll recall at your last meeting on March 19th, we had a discussion about funding for VFDs in the upcoming budget. And we talked about setting a fire tax that would have no impact on the property tax bill for our residents. And so I think while we understood the intention to have a neutral adjustment to the tax rate offset, a neutral adjustment with the fire tax offset by your property tax, the motion that was adopted by the board, in fact, actually did set both a fire tax rate and a reduction to the property tax that did cause a slight increase on the tax bill. So it went from a 70 cents to a 0.7031 increase. So there was a slight increase, and we know that that was not what the board wanted to do. So we're seeking some clarification from you all tonight on what your priorities are for funding. The one thing that Russell and I have learned through this process is that the fire tax is a complicated beast, and we are working out the details of exactly how to create and implement this, and want to make sure that you're aware of some of the steps in this process as we move forward. So that's why we're bringing this back. And because we have such a tight time frame to get the fire tax in place, we had already released the agenda when we discovered that we needed to bring this back. So we apologize for having to add this as an agenda adjustment, but it just could not wait till the next meeting in order to meet the many deadlines that are laid out in the statute. So Russell will walk you through that process, and we're hoping we can get some clarity among us on exactly how we want to fund VFDs next year.
Russell, just before you get started, I just want to make sure that some of the players that have been involved in the fire department funding, we made sure that we contacted those individuals and the players to make sure that they would be able to be here.
Thank you. Yes, so on Wednesday, I had emailed the president of the Fire Chiefs Association, Assistant Fire Chief Wayne Wren from the city of Roxborough, and then I had Doug also follow up to make sure that the message had gotten out that we were adding this and wanted to include everyone in this discussion tonight. So that has been done.
Thank you. Russell.
Allergies are bothering me a little bit tonight, so I may sound funny. One of the biggest things that's jumped out at us in the last little bit is the full week notice for public hearing, and that's what we're concerned about tonight. Normally, a public hearing, you would advertise in the paper, and then you have your public hearing at a scheduled time. For fire tax, however, that public notice must be mailed to every citizen affected by the fire tax. So in order to get the notice out and wait at least 4 weeks after the notice is received by the taxpayer, you have to get those out pretty soon. The print vendor we use to mail notices like this takes 30 days to get the print file set up. Another nuance about this would the data would be coming from 2 different places. So the tax data, what's maintained in my office, would mail to all taxpayers outside the city limits. But then we have another whole database in the motor vehicle system that would have other addresses. Not everybody who lives in the proposed fire district would own real estate. So we're gonna have to take both those databases and try to merge them together, get everyone at least one notice. Some people will probably get more than one. And that's the reason it's so expensive. And we have to design that notice and have it ready to go, taking 30 days to design it. When we first started talking about it, I thought we would wait after the primary to start with the notice. And knowing it's gonna take 30 days to get it ready and get all the addresses set up, we need direction to go ahead and work on that now. We won't need to set the public hearing at this meeting, but we probably will need to do it at the April 23rd meeting. And also have the findings of fact that say that we can do a fire tax and it's reasonable and necessary, and the county attorney will work with us on that. But at the 23rd meeting, we'd like to have a notice prepared. Probably a postcard format would be the most reasonable, the cheapest way of doing it. And then at that meeting, the board could decide when they want to have the public hearing. If you don't do it at the April 23rd meeting, your next meeting being late May would be too late to have the fire tax for this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year, excuse me. Some other things come up with about fire tax, of course, if you actually end up doing a fire tax, is things like cash flow and revenue impact and other things that happens, but the biggest thing I'm concerned about now is to actually get the notice out to the public, if that's where the board wants to head with this.
What's the cost? You mentioned cost associated with getting the notice out. What's the cost associated with that?
The initial cost for the print vendor, they charge $300 to set up the print job, and that's very, very minimal. And oftentimes they'll waive it if it's a big print job or a recurring print job. Since the data is coming from 2 different databases, and I'm uncertain if I can take both lists and combine them to save postage where everybody doesn't get 2, I'm estimating that to be about a $10,000 expense. That's doing a postcard. A 4x6 is the biggest postcard that will qualify for the postcard rate. And a lot of information has to go on that postcard. Another problem with the postcard and the notice, of course, if we send out 20,000 of these notices, we have to have some way for the staff to answer questions, because a lot of people are going to call and want to know what it means, what happens if they need to come. Of course, the question is going to be, how much is my tax bill going up? We won't be able to answer those questions at that time. So it's going to cause quite a bit of phone calls to staff. My staff will be focused on trying to get the society's tables updated so we can actually charge the fire tax correctly on motor vehicles and on property taxes. And we can help with the phone calls some, but we need some help with the phone calls.
So what's your proposal on that to make sure our taxpayers are taken care of?
We probably need to meet with staff so everybody has the unified voice to answer that. In the past, we have used a hotline where it calls in and then it goes through rotation. It would involve the county manager's office, my office, anybody who has any information that would help explain the fire tax. There'd be multiple departments working on it. So we would reach out to anybody who could help us with it.
So it's mainly just staff cost and not an outside vendor cost?
I had not thought about using an outside vendor. I do think we will be able to handle it in-house. We never have done a notice this large about a public hearing, so it really is uncharted grounds.
Okay. Any further questions for Russell?
I think we'd like to clarify a little bit more the revenue impact and just make sure that we're all working from an accurate set of numbers. So we have talked about how a penny on the property tax rate generates more money than a penny on the fire tax, and that is because the city residents will not pay the fire tax. So each penny that you are putting towards fire funding from a fire tax is $76,579 less because you're using it in the fire tax versus using it in your general fund. So we're losing $76,000 for each penny that we're putting over in a fire tax. I feel like part of our job is to let you know the most efficient use of county taxpayer money. And so I just want to be clear that that's something that you're comfortable with, that loss of revenue. You would generate more on the property tax and general fund side than you would in a fire tax. We also wanted to clarify that your city residents then, because they are not paying into the property tax and you're dropping your property tax rate to offset the fire tax, they will actually see a decrease in their tax bill. And we've run some funding scenarios in Russell's memo, which you have in front of you, so that you can see what those decreases will be for our city residents as well.
We discussed several scenarios, and I threw some numbers out there. It's not really to set you into a tax rate. But if you wanted to fund the fire departments at $330,000 more and cut the general fund a penny, then you're looking at about $400,000. Of course, the most efficient way of doing this would be to leave it all out of the general fund. I understand why the fire departments desire a fire tax. It's a more guaranteed funding in their eyes. The board could fund the fire departments just as well out of general funds. If the board desires a fire tax, and that is what the fire departments I've heard want, and we could definitely make it happen if we stay on course and make sure that we meet the requirements of public hearing.
I don't understand the cash flow number one there. Why would we, if we agree on $1 million, why wouldn't we fund them and then reimburse ourselves? Why would we be cutting a check every month?
Well, the problem with the cash flow comes in a true fire tax or a true special district tax. You will distribute the money the month after it's collected. And that's the way we do for the city of Roxborough. When we collect their money for July, they'll get it around August 8th. So it always runs about a month behind. A few years down the road, that probably won't be an issue, but the very first year, I think the fire departments they have their own budget set up to get their money early July. So the first year especially, you may have to loan them money or give them part of the funding early, and then once you've surpassed what you fronted them, then you can start giving extra money after that. But it would be to budget $1 million of fire tax money and know for certain you're going to collect $1 million in fire tax money. It's a little dangerous, because if you had a big industry declare bankruptcy, they wouldn't pay any of their taxes that year. So you may be giving money out that you won't collect yourself. So the whole idea of a fire tax would be, or any special district tax would be, give the money out after it's collected. That will not work for the first year. It may be something that works slowly over the next 2, 3, 4 years. You may have to give them most of the money this year in July, the next year give them a little bit less, the next year a little bit less, until they are used to the funding. Most of the money will be given out as we collect it, so most of the money will go out in the January and February checks after we collect in December and January. If you do a true collect $1, give $1 out.
And in the past, Russell, we've had the state tax assessment businesses such as Duke Energy and those people, and their allocations sometimes come in even later than what other business and industry comes in.
Correct. So we are very conservative on our budget estimates because of our state appraised properties. We have about 20% of our tax base is unknown when we adopt our budget. We'll know that number around September 1, and they always pay on time, but they may pay December 31 this year and January 1 next year, which means that's why I said that money may come in January or February, depending on when that check comes. If that state appraised number came in low, and it did come in lower than we anticipated at least 1 year, if we fronted that money out before we even collected it, and then we found out in September we weren't going to collect it, we already created ourselves a hole.
We would be in the same boat with, let's say EMS. We give them their money as soon as we pass the budget, and then we don't collect whatever our collection rate that we budgeted that year. We don't go to them and say, well, take 3 days off.
Well, it's slightly different because with the county department, you don't give them all the money July 1. I know there have been times when we didn't buy vehicles early in the year, anticipating or waiting to see what the state appraised property is going to be able to make sure the collections will come in like they should. So you're not giving them all the money at one time the very first day of the year or the very first month of the year. Their spending is more spread out over the whole 12 months.
their budget's a little bit more than 1 million. I mean, what I'm saying is I think the county can front $1 million and get it back instead of paying out monthly. I mean, I can understand we were doing it with our $60 million county budget, but I mean, we're just talking about $1 million here.
Yeah, I think the hope would be that we would eventually have it as a true fire tax where when you collect it, you give it out. But not
I mean,
for
for true fire tax, you have to do what I did. My motion was, which was to pay all of the $1 million out of the fire tax. But what we're talking about here is not a true fire tax because we're paying some out of general fund and some out of fire tax. So to me, that's what's causing all the problems. We need to either raise property tax and pay them all out of general fund, or we need to set the fire tax to what it takes to get $1 million. That solves all your headache, doesn't it?
If we set the fire tax, then we would still pay it when it was received.
No, we can split that. I understand what he's saying about that. But part of this headache is we're getting some of the money over here. We're robbing Peter over here to pay Paul, just so we come up with $1 million instead of just saying either we're going to raise the property tax and get it all out of general fund, or set the fire tax to the level that it takes to get $1 million. Right now, we're trying to say, oh, well, we're going to give them a fire tax, but we're not going to get all that $1 million out of it. So now we got to find over here in the general fund.
And to your point, next year, you have to find some money out of general fund again if you don't do the complete fire tax.
Keep funding $1 million.
So my example D, and the memo I shared with you, that is the true fire tax. 2.72 cents to give them $1 million. And whatever you do with the general fund, that's reaching all the elected officials and not me.
So you originally said $76,579 was what we would lose on the penny fire tax because the city is not, wouldn't be a part of the fire tax. So we were discussing previously of about 2.5 cents to make up the 669 to $1 million.
I think we said somewhere around 1.82 cents generated the 669.
So 1.82, so you're looking at somewhere around $150,000 less that we would get because we called it a fire tax, in addition to the $10,000 that we would spend to get the mailers out to do the notices. And so, you know, looking at efficiency in government and saving the taxpayers money, I personally would rather just give the VFD funding out of our budget and our fund balance. I've been a part of this board for 3 years and through 3 different budget sessions, and every year VFD funding has taken more time and more staff effort than any other budget item that I've dealt with, and I would be remiss to say that it probably is true that we've spent as much or more time just on VFD funding as we have any department budget.
That is because of the magnitude of the increase in which we're talking about funding the VFDs. Giving them $1 million this year is a 49% increase. So finding the funds to generate that kind of increase is what is causing a lot of the stress.
We've been talking about it for how long?
Ever since I've been here.
3 years that I've been on the board.
I'm going to say 10 years.
And I mentioned last year, property tax increase to pay them. And not one person has come in here in the informal comment period, and not even Mr. Leewood all tonight. No one said anything about this fire tax or property tax increase if it's going towards public safety. I understand we just don't want to be raising taxes to pay for pet projects or whatever, but we're talking about public safety here. That's in our oath that we take. And so I don't see where the issue is by getting it all from the fire tax or either raising the property tax, because all these citizens sitting here, now one of them signed up tonight to say don't raise my taxes or don't do a fire tax, because I think they probably value their safety.
And I agree with you, and 3 of the things that we are part of is education, public safety, and economic development. And although you don't have someone come in here and sign up to speak in opposition of it, doesn't mean that there are not people out in the community who are in opposition of it. So I agree with you. It's not a pet project, but we have a how much $million budget?
65 million.
We have a $65 million budget, and there are pet projects within that $65 million budget. So to say that you're not going to fund VFDs because it's not a pet project is not entirely true, because we already have pet projects within our $65 million budget. We have departments that this county has taken on that are nonprofit that shouldn't be part of county government because they're not education, public safety, or economic development. And we've continued to fund those as long as I've been a resident of Person County, and nobody has ever come up and spoke out to cut those non-mandated services. So if we want to talk about pet projects, we can talk about those. This is not a pet project. This is a public safety issue. And we have the means within our budget to spend $1 million to fund VFDs. It's not a very popular thing to say that we're going to cut every other budget to fund VFDs, but we can do that because it's part of the core three that all of us are supposed to be working on. So my proposal, if I had Tracy and King for the day, which I'm not, would be to let's take the money out of our general budget. We don't lose $150,000 of tax money that we're giving back to the city in the form of helping to run the city fire department. We don't lose $10,000 in a postcard delivery to talk about having a public.
The only reason you losing that $150,000 because you want to lower the property tax rate. Am I correct? That's why you're losing it. If you were to raise the fire tax to what it needs to be, the 2 point whatever, to get that $1 million and leave the property tax rate at 70 cents, then the city pays exactly the same.
Correct, but let's define pet projects. You originally said that
None of us were here when
we were not there, but
you're talking about public person industries. You're talking about the recycling system.
I haven't talked about anything.
That's
All I've said
that's
that
the nonprofit I think the county has taken over that we're running. That's gotta be what
we
you're
have
talking about.
nonprofits and we have non-mandated services.
So you want to close the library? That's one.
No, I didn't
What
say
else?
close.
We don't have to fund the schools, but capital. So you don't want to fund their operating costs this year?
You can't cut that unless you cut the whole budget the same amount.
You're right. So what you're proposing to pay for their $1 million would take what, maybe a 10% cut across the boards, which would include the schools.
No.
Why wouldn't it?
Because you can
If you
get
do
it from
across the board.
can get it from unmandated services.
Yeah, but you want to pick on a few.
Why
not?
Could I do just one thing real quick? Could I hand the gavel over to him, because I know I've gotten into the discussion. So would it be okay if
you're the chairman? You can talk.
All right, okay. I just know somebody got me in trouble one time for having discussions and it wanted me to turn it over to somebody else. So I just wanted to make sure that we did that. But we have unmandated services within Person County.
Every county does.
And you said earlier that there are pet projects that we could or could not fund.
No, I said this is not a pet project.
This is not a pet project. Okay, so that means that you think that there are pet projects within our county.
No, what I'm saying is none of us came this year in this budget said, give me $1 million for a pet project. That's
Okay.
what I said.
All right, so out of $650 million or $65 million,
which is all not county money. Let's get it straight.
That's
Our
correct.
property tax, the only money that this county collects is about what, $22 million. That $65 million is not. That includes federal, state. That's pass-through money. You hear it. We only give Janet $1.2 million, but our budget's $4 million.
But-
Same thing up there with Carlton. So let's not confuse people and think that $65 million is your property tax dollars, because it is not.
but it's all their money because it comes out of
You're
their.
right, it's all of our money. You're
It
exactly
comes
right.
out of all of their paychecks. It comes out of all
That's
of
right.
their inheritance fees and all
I get
of
elected
that.
to Congress,
So-
I'll talk about the federal. But I'm local right now.
So we're local, and we can afford, and we've heard this for 3 years that I've been on the board, that we can afford to fund the volunteer fire departments out of our general fund. Correct?
Yes, we can afford to do it.
We can afford
without
to do
going
that.
backwards by cutting some of these departments you want to cut.
That is correct, but we can still fund them, and everybody gets their money, and the volunteer fire departments gets what they're asking for. So, do we continue to raise taxes? that's one of the things that we've had growth in, we had in our budget retreat.
Conservative leadership board here that,
I
my
think we need
opinion, if
Need to
we-
move along.
All right.
We're
Can-
okay.
Can I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
I know I might be out of order. One thing the fire tax does is provide funding to fire departments. One thing it does not do that is a misconception, it does not guarantee funding. So we can set a fire tax this year of 1 cent or 2.72 cents. Next year, another board could say 0, 1 cent, 10 cents. So it doesn't guarantee funding. What I have to have tonight is a direction from the board of whether or not you want to prepare the notices to be mailed, and you can decide when that public hearing will be at the next meeting, but we have to get started on getting the notices ready to go out. If we're going, so the question would be, are we going to do move forward with trying to get a fire tax in place, or are we going to try to pay for it out of general fund? We don't have to worry about what the tax rate's going to be. That's part of the budget process, and thankfully I don't have to deal with that one. But we have to decide tonight if we're going to try to stay on board to get a fire tax implemented. If we don't do that tonight, we will be out of time.
And Ray, thank you for your comments, your concerns, and I appreciate that. And I like lively debate, and I appreciate that we had this in front of all of our people. If y'all would allow, I'll take the gavel back.
You wanna give it back there?
So we have a proposal, or we have a
Decision to make.
a proposal on the table that we came up with during our budget retreat to have staff work on a fire tax, which was revenue neutral and would not cause the residents of Person County a increase in their taxes. You guys have heard debate, and you've heard from staff, and you've heard from our tax office. We need to make a decision tonight on whether or not we're going to continue to move forward on the fire tax, or whether we're going to direct staff to come up with a budget that includes funding for the fire departments, which does not include a fire tax. And so with that proposal on the table, do we continue forward with the fire tax, or do we go in a different direction? So, comments.
Mr. Chairman, since I was the one who made the original motion at our last meeting, I would, my mind has not changed on, after speaking with many residents, I only had one email that opposed what we were talking about, and spoke to many residents, received no phone calls, and the people that I did speak were very happy with the solution that we came up with. And in the spirit of what we had discussed, I don't know if you need me to give a motion on the option, which I prefer on this, to give the county manager, which you're going to need some direction to move forward with the budget. But my original motion stands from the other night of having a revenue neutral tax rate to include a fire tax. So I would, you're shaking your head.
The motion from the last meeting was a revenue neutral to the county, but a tax increase to the taxpayers.
They're telling you tonight they can't do that. So you won't support this little slight increase.
You got option C.
Again, I wasn't trying to lock commissioners into a tax rate tonight. That's something that we should deal with in the budget process. Just in theory, do we want a fire tax in place and move forward with getting that where it can happen, or do we want to try to do it all out of general fund? That's really the only direction that we have to cover tonight. And Debbie, you definitely can go ahead and set the rate now if you want to, but that's not what we have to have done tonight.
If you can provide clarity on the concepts, we'll bring back in the budget proposal what those numbers will be once we have passed our April 15th deadline for people paying taxes and have all of the needs accounted for in the budget. To set that rate now is a little premature when we don't know the full picture of both the needs on the expenditure side and the revenues that are coming in. So I think we have agreement to fund them at $1 million, and we wanted to make sure there was clarity for that. If there is interest in doing the fire tax, I'm clear that the fire tax for Commissioner Puryear would need to be offset with an adjustment on the property tax rate. And we would prefer that you just leave that concept as your motion without tying the specific amounts.
Okay. So, Russell, you just need a motion to proceed forward with a fire tax
Proceed
notification.
forward with notification for the
All right,
upcoming fire tax.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to proceed forward with the original fire tax request. Is there any further discussion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I got beat up for not having any discussion before, and you know that I made a substitute motion that we do a fire tax without making it revenue neutral. And so I'm not going to be voting in favor of this. It's not that I'm not in favor of the fire tax, but I think you need to implement the fire tax, period. Add it on and collect it and, you know, fund the fire departments that way. I don't think you need to, what you're fixing to do, even though they're not saying it, is you coming right back and taking right back out of the budget. So you know, you're just kicking the can down the road. Next year you're going to be trying to find $1 million either that way or some other way. So, you know, I just want to let you know that's why I'm not voting for it. And if I really wanted to throw a kink in it, I guess I could make a substitute motion that we do the 2.72 cents fire tax, period. And I'll make that as a substitute motion.
Not kick the can down the road past the primary. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
All right.
That's the road we kick it down.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table and a substitute motion. The substitute motion is for a 2.72 cent
fire tax
increase and call it a fire tax on top of the existing 7 cents tax
On top
rate.
of what?
70-cent tax rate.
70-cent tax rate on 100, 7 cents on the dollar. I'm sorry.
You're good.
I like simple numbers. My mind can't compute sometimes. So we have a substitute motion. Is there any further comment on the substitute motion?
That would make it 72.
72, 72, 72 and a quarter, about 72 and 3/4 basically. If you combine those two together.
72 and 3/4 would be the rate for per 100.
Is that right? What'd you say?
For the county citizens, not the city.
The basis of this motion is to get the $1 million from the fire tax. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct.
So you put the number that needs to get the $1 million.
They put the number down as
Leave the
2.72.
tax rate alone and get it from the fire tax. That's the motion. I understand.
So just to clarify, your motion is to get the $1 million, whether it's 2 3/4 or 2 7/8, whatever that number is. Staff has that. Okay.
Which may vary because they don't know yet.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to clarify before we went on a vote. So their substitute motion is to get the $1 million and call it a fire tax. Is there any further discussion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will say you can call it what you want to, but it is a fire tax, truly, if you do it that way.
Right. Okay. All right. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
So we have 2 in favor, 3 against. And now we have a motion back on the table to, which was the original motion to have the fire tax set with the original tax rate.
We're not
And
getting
the
to, no,
revenue-
just to instruct the tax assessor to begin the process of advertising the proposed tax, fire tax.
So the motion is to move forward with the process of starting the notification
Process.
not a number or an amount.
Not another, as direction from the county manager to, that she would work out the numbers.
Okay.
Under the concept that we would have an offset in the reduction of the property tax rate.
Yes.
So that the taxpayer has a 0 increase in their tax bill.
Yes.
The extra part's not what I need. extra, well, I
You just need.
We need different
Need
things.
to make sure I can do a notice.
And what I just said.
Concept, just make sure I can do the notice and have that back to the board April 23rd, so y'all can set the date for public hearing, so I can put it on the notice and mail it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table for the tax administrator to put it on record and move forward with staff coming up with the resolution for revenue neutral. Okay, is there any further comment?
I voted for this last month, but I'm not going to vote for it now because this entire process, in my opinion, has become political and not about public safety.
Truly noted. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, ayes have it. We're going
We're
to
good. Okay.
item number 9, consideration to grant or deny text amend the ordinance regulating automobile graveyards and junkyards. So we had a ordinance that was on the books, and the last meeting we had, we discussed the graveyard and junkyard ordinance. There was a request to move this to this meeting in case there were any commercial customers or commercial residents, business owners that would like to come in and speak related to this item. Have we had anyone? Okay, so since no one came to discuss the ordinance, Lori, has there been any change or any addition to the ordinance rules, regulations?
No, I do not have any new information to present to you. I've had 3 inquiries. There was a newspaper article about the public hearing, and I've had 3 inquiries about new proposed junkyards in residential that I've told them are on hold right now until you make a decision this evening.
I got some of those same calls. And so my concern was there's some already in the book, Section 8, because we dealt with this with this family out on Cedar Grove Road. So I felt like there was something that we could do for these people that are calling in that is not bearing on tonight. My concern to table it last month was because we were all of a sudden doing something different for commercial. And I wanted to know what were the unintended consequences for businesses in this county who have been here for quite a while when we go start messing with this. I understand nobody wants to live beside a junk pile, and I understand you trying to put that part in here with residential, but I also feel that there is something already in the ordinance, which was Section 8, that we can handle that through misdemeanor process, through the courts or whatever, same process we handle, like I said, down on Cedar Grove Church Road. So my question again tonight is, for existing businesses, with this new language for commercial, what does that mean when you put in there for a period of 90 days or more? So if someone brings a vehicle in, leaves it on their property, doesn't pay their bill, or doesn't give them the money they need to start, and it's there for over 90 days, are we all of a sudden, are they in violation now of Person County ordinance?
Staff would send them a letter. Well, first we typically go out to the site and we try to have a one-on-one and talk with them. As with most of the cases, if they need 2 weeks, if they need 30 days, I've got cases where I've given them 90 days and then I follow up with them. So it's not strict that we're going to automatically give you a letter and give you 30 days and start that process. So we try to work with them, but if there was a vehicle out there for greater than 90 days, then we would start that process by going out and talking to them. And if the commissioners feel that they have issues with that change to the commercial junkyard, I have no problem removing that sentence because staff's primary goal is to adjust residential. So if the commissioners do not feel comfortable with that sentence, staff has no issue with removing that sentence.
And
take it out.
According to the original intent was that it has to be a complaint filed. You guys aren't out actively looking for
window shopping, are you?
No, we have plenty of other work.
So I just wanted to clarify that it has to be an active complaint. And your original statement was that we've had 3 new active complaints that have come in on the residential side and not on the commercial side since we met last.
Yes.
In the last year, well, 2 years now, I guess, in the last 2 years, how many commercial complaints have we received?
Commercial, 2.
So out of how many residential? So
35, 36.
So
I haven't gone out
it's
to verify.
basically about 6%, somewhere
It's a
there
small
about
percentage.
7%. I'm simple-minded, I can't do math.
You
So-
wanna take that out, Ray?
Yeah, I won't vote for it with the commercial part in there, but I'm fine with doing the residential and giving you a little more teeth to get these pile of lawnmowers and trash out of people's yard if it's bothering their neighbor and it's excessive and they're obviously running some type of junkyard. But
Would you like to take the number of day period out, and just do it as a per commercial complaint, and follow the same process that we use on the residential side? Letters
I would
and
take out this establishment or
last
place or
sentence.
business which stores or keeps for a period of 90 days or more materials with in the meaning of junk as defined in the section shall be deemed to be a junkyard without the meaning of this chapter. I would take that out.
So remove the last sentence from commercial junkyard.
Mhm.
Okay.
Does anybody have any comments or concerns with that? Okay.
Yes, that's the definition of commercial junkyard, last sentence in red.
Any further comments, concerns? All in favor of adopting the ordinance as written with the adjustment as Commissioner Jeffers indicated, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr.
Thank-
Chairman, can I have a statement of reasonableness and consistency if you want to amend that motion or do it separately?
Yes, and say it and we'll work on it.
So the one that staff proposed was the text amendment request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future planning goals and objectives of Person County. It is reasonable and in the public interest as it will provide clear and concise regulations in the ordinance regulating automobile graveyards and junkyards in Person County.
I would make a motion in response to her comment. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Reasonable in consideration. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 10, reimbursement of up to $250,000 for previously spent Person County Business and Industrial Center funds for water and sewer lines, engineering for Person County Mega Park. Mr. David Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. After the last discussion, I'm a little hesitant to come up here, but I come to you tonight as chairman of the Economic Development Committee, and we are asking for the funds that, as far as I know, were previously agreed to prior to my chairmanship, and we have done quite a bit of due diligence on a mega site, which is now certified area. That site has put us on the map worldwide. We probably need to advertise a little bit more than we have, but it just happened, and we have deplenished a good portion of our funds, and in order for PCBIC in particular to act as it was intended to be, which is a way of dealing with clients on a fast, speediest way. If we would get a client, we don't need to burden y'all with day-to-day ideas. So, but the only way for PCBIC to operate like that, and you know, if we do get a project, we need to have some way of attaching funds that we can put sewer lines or whatever that is, if need be. But I come to you tonight to ask that the $250,000 be transferred to PCBIC.
Okay, I'd like to speak first on this, if you don't mind. Originally, this was my motion several months ago, and it tied to the ability for PCBIC to get certification of the mega site and to move forward with a client. So my original motion months ago was to set aside $250,000 for Person County Business and Industrial Center funds for water and sewer lines, and half to go when the PCBIC got a client, when they got the certification, and half to come later when they got a client. My understanding with moving this project forward, they spent quite a bit of the money that was associated with this project, and I still think that we have a opportunity, just as Mr. Newell said earlier, to bring a worldwide client in here. We've indicated, or we've discussed in the past, several clients who have had interest in our park, and some that would bring business and industry in here, which would have 12 or 1,300 employees with an average income of about $60,000 to $70,000. And so my original intent being given half and half for PCBIC, I would like to ask that the board consider moving forward that we give them the whole $250,000 rather than half and half as we move forward. And that's my comments, and I welcome any more comments from the group.
Move for approval.
Okay, we got a motion on the table to give PCBIC the $250,000, which was originally intent to be $125,000 and $125,000, to give them the whole amount so that they can move forward in economic development. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
I don't know what you were worried about.
Sir?
I don't know what you were worried about.
Can I clarify? The original motion was asking for the money to come from the water and sewer extension fund that we have, and I need clarification that you would like the funds to come from there versus a general fund reimbursement. There's a balance at fiscal year end of approximately $340,000 in that fund. So if we pay out
That's what the abstract
$50, yes, sir, that would leave you $90,000.
Okay. And the other thing, we had a business within Person County that we didn't spend some money on, so we got that to move forward with later if we need to. But it was an economic incentive that we didn't pay out.
Yes.
So we still have that in reserve.
You could use that or this fund.
Okay,
whichever.
I still want to attach it to the original intent. I just wanted to make sure that was still there.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So yes, pull it from water and sewer, and we'll
Okay.
still have about 90,000 in that fund.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newell. Item number 11, we took care of as 8B, but we still have item number 12, VHF radio contract. Ms. Tate?
Good evening, Commissioners. In your agenda packet, you have a draft of the contract for the VHF equipment. This includes the purchase of the equipment and the installation of the equipment. The total bid was for $1.2 million. We did receive only one bid, and so we followed general statute procedure, which meant we had to rebid it. Again, we received only one bid, and that was for $1.2 million. If you have any technical questions, we have the consultant here who can answer those for you. Ron has reviewed this contract, staff has reviewed this contract, and so, but if you have any changes or comments or questions, we're happy to make edits to the contract and answer any questions that you might have.
Maybe one or two. Do
Sure.
you have any estimate as to how many vendors could have responded to this and didn't?
Good evening,
evening.
Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Frank Merrim. I'm the consultant.
Okay.
And to answer your question, sir, there was a list of 5 vendors that that I took upon myself to contact and let them know, in addition to the ad that was placed in the newspaper. So I did contact them. They showed a little bit of interest initially, and said, please send me the RFQ, the RFP document, which I did. One vendor responded. One vendor declined, called me immediately after the RFP was released, and informed me that he was declining because of the requirement for the bid deposit. It was a little bit more financially onerous than he could handle. Third vendor called me and said that they did not have sufficient staff and sufficient organization in this area. They serve the Codell Hills area and serve Virginia. The other three vendors did not get back to me after repeated emails and phone calls. So a total of 5, sir.
Okay, and the one that did submit a bid, was that the one that submitted first?
Well,
First time around?
it's the one that we're going with, or we may, if you approve it. It's Mobile Communications America, MCA.
Is your incumbent, it is an incumbent or a vendor that you are
Currently
using?
using.
Currently
Number
using.
one.
They've
Okay.
supplied the console, the new console that you installed, I think it was a couple of years ago. And they're currently doing a project to relocate
I
the.
just didn't want it to be creative writing in the contract or specifications that others couldn't meet, just so they, technically could all meet those.
Yes, we believe they're
Yeah,
qualified.
right.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good.
Move for approval.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? Hear no further discussion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, ayes have it. Item number 12,
Yes.
recommended capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2019 through 2013. Ms. York and Ms. Amy.
Yes, Commissioners, this is the manager's recommended capital improvement plan that spans the next 5 years. So it's fiscal year 2019 through 2023. And this is the document that serves as your planning tool to help us pay for and manage large capital projects. So these are projects that meet the threshold of $50,000 per project. And we incorporate the needs of county departments along with our partners at Piedmont Community College and Person County Schools. And both Dr. Senegal and Dr. Peterson are here and available to speak to their projects should you have specific questions about those. In past versions, we've also incorporated senior center, museum, other county-owned facilities, but you won't find any of those projects in this version. So not only does this project kind of pave our way for the recommended budget, because it's obviously a large chunk of your funding that gets designated for capital needs, but it also has in here the impacts that you'll find on the operating budgets as well. And although the projects span the next 5 years, we're only asking for a commitment of funding on the upcoming fiscal year, on fiscal year 19. So you only approve the funding on an annual fiscal year basis, despite it being a 5-year plan. So I just wanted to clarify that. In terms of our process, we present it tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you have about projects or the financing. Amy has already gone over the financing of $4.4 million, and so that leaves the rest of the projects to be pay-as-you-go at approximately $2.9 million. None of those are financed. So your total funding for next year for capital needs, including the financing that will wrap up this year, is about $7.3 million. So the process, again, is to bring it to you tonight. We'll bring it back at your next meeting on April 23rd for you to actually adopt it. And in the meantime, if there's any questions or additional information that staff can provide to you, we would be happy to do that. I can walk you through the document if you need some navigation on how to read this. The most helpful pages are usually what we refer to as your grid. It starts on page 10, and that sort of shows you a snapshot of each year what is being funded over the 5 years.
So just looking at fiscal year 2019, I see in here that we have the early college POD building to construct a new building for early college. And if I could ask Ms. Senegal the question, has the requirements for entering into the early college program encompassed all of the citizens of Person County, or are there still restrictions on who can and cannot apply for this program?
Your question about the criteria for who can apply for the PESOL program, it's open to all students. It's competitive. There are only a certain number of spots, and so based on the entry criteria, the principal of the PESOL program evaluates those students based on the current pool of students who apply, and that's how decisions are made about who gets into that program.
But originally, the requirements to get in, people were given additional points or consideration for specific issues that were related to them or their family. Are those special considerations still in place?
It's still part of the criteria, but it's certainly not the only criteria. We're also looking at their academic potential. We're looking at recommendations, and so there are a number of things. But as part of the public schools, that is part of the criteria that they've established. Yes.
Because my original concern with the former president is that all of the people of Person County pay into the tax system, and if we're going to continue to fund this program, then all of the citizens of Person County who have students that would like to participate in this should be on an even playing field, and not any consideration given if your family has never been to college, your economic need, things of that nature. So those are still in place. If you have family members that have never been to college, you get a consideration. If you have income below a certain amount, you're given a consideration, and things of that nature. That's my question.
In addition to the things that you've just identified, we also consider their academic record. We also look at recommendations, and so it's a holistic picture of what the student is going to bring to the table to be part of the PESOL program. But it's open to every student.
Okay.
Right? And it depends on, from year to year, who decides to apply.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was my only question. Thank you, Ms. Senegal.
And the total cost there is at 161?
Related to the pod building?
Yeah.
So it's actually $473,000, and we're paying it over 5 years, with next year's funding amount being $161,740. So if you pay that, this project comes with a 5-year installment payment.
In a successful program, and spilled milk we shouldn't worry about. And I don't know that I need to remind this board that about 5 or 6 years ago, we had a $3 million grant over a 5-year period that would have paid for this. And it didn't happen out of dirty word politics. And I don't want to see that happen again. This is a successful program, blossoming, growing, and doing what it's intended to do, and I think we need to leave it there and go forward with it, is my basic comments.
Any further comments on the 2019
See, we could do the
budget?
If we had done the fire tax and left the tax rate at 70 cents, we would have saved $669,000 in this current year budget. We could have built that building, Gordon. I just thought I'd let you know.
Okay, well, and we could have had that building paid for if we had done the right thing 5 years ago.
Y'all didn't want to use building, which the county could afford at that time.
Oh, yes, we could. We had $200,000 in the bus garage money left over that would have paid for that
We
building.
offered you a used pod out of Statesville. Sam Kennedy found it, and you
Yeah,
you turned it. You turned it down.
take a 15-year building and haul it from Statesville to Person County and see how long it stays together.
People do it all the time.
Nah. put it on your farm then, not for the public.
We got the space.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, any further comments
No, I
on the
won't go there
2019
'cause
budget?
I can go back too far, so I'm not gonna go, I'm not gonna go down the path that Gordon's going down, 'cause we can get back to a whole lot of things that cost the county a lot of money.
Well, let's go, that'd be fun to talk about.
So let's just talk about the
What
2019.
what question's gonna answer about the recommended funding?
2019 recommended capital
Thank
improvement
you.
plan. Are there any other concerns or related to the 2019 budget and the capital funding? And just for my clarity, we're not, our vote tonight to accept the 2019 budget doesn't come into play with the 2020, because I see the new hangar is back on there, and we had originally used that money that we had put in balance, fund balance, to do the runway extension. So this is bringing it back into play after this year. If
We'll begin stockpiling that money to get to 800,000 so that we can put that in the forecast.
all right,
But I don't need a vote tonight.
all we need is just
Any
staff
questions, any
approval.
feedback? I'll be bringing this back in 2 weeks' time for you to vote on it at that point. Amy, have I
Any further
forgotten
discussion?
anything you wanted to mention?
No, I did have one tiny little mistake that I found today as I was going through this one more time, and it's just it's a title issue. The second column should say budget year, 2018-19, instead of planning year, because that is the year that you are actually committing to fund, and and once this is approved, then it becomes part of your adopted budget. So that's why we distinguish next year as the budget year versus planning year.
Nobody's perfect.
What?
No.
Any further questions for staff?
Can I have one more minute to ask
Sure.
Sybil to talk to you about stormwater? You see
Yeah, I saw
in
that on
here,
there.
and so I don't want to blindside you. I want to prepare you for an ugly conversation that we will be having down the road related to stormwater. So Sybil, if you will give us a preview of what
Yes.
that's about.
Well, we won't have that full conversation tonight. But I did want to make you aware that you'll see in your CIP that there's $3.8 million allocated for stormwater projects or project. And I wanted to make you aware that there is an opportunity that these stormwater projects will be delayed. And if that's something that you're interested in doing, delaying that project so that it doesn't have to show up on your CIP until 2025, which is or 2024, excuse me, please contact your state representatives. They are considering at this moment introducing some legislation to delay the cities and counties who are impacted by these stormwater regulations for having to fund the cleanup of the Upper Neuse River Basin until 2024. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, and if that legislation is successful, it doesn't mean that we aren't going to have to eventually pay for that. It just means there will be a delay in when we pay it. And because that cost is so high at $3.8 million, I do want to make you aware that we will likely have to consider having a rate increase in our stormwater fund, not this year, but potentially next year. So these are numbers that are moving. As I've just mentioned, the date can move, so there's a lot of flux that's going into these regulations. But I just wanted you to be aware of that's on the radar. And if you're interested in the delay, again, please contact your state representatives.
I do want to comment that the Upper Neuse River Group has been working with Representative Yarborough and the group in Raleigh to get this done. The Upper Neuse does support that. From the testing that's being done so far, if you go on the website and look, the lake is much cleaner than they first claimed that it was to start with. Sediment level in it is not anywhere near what they projected it would be in 20 years after the lake was built. So Upper Neuse Group financed doing a study to see what the sediment level was, and you can look at those numbers online if you go on there under the Upper Neuse. And we've spent a considerable amount of money sampling down there because the state quit doing it during the recession. And so, you know, they're not trying to, and they don't have the pollution problem that they first thought they had, is what it's really showing, but we have not got everybody to admit that yet. And all this goes back to the Clean Water Act and to some of the things that they're doing on the federal level. And that was one reason I made a point of getting on the National Association of Counties Environment Committee, because they've been discussing the stormwater, and the Corps of Engineers grab at trying to classify all of the water from a road ditch as water that they had jurisdiction over. And that waters of the U.S., you've heard a lot of discussion about that, and the President made an effort to try to kick that back some, and the Congress is working on trying to slow that down. But that was real overreach by them. And I just want to, I'm not trying to get in on what she's saying is right. By law, we've ended up, I think they're going to kick it down the road, and they may reduce some of the requirements. If they do that, then we'll be in pretty good shape. Because I think what we're doing now with part of it is the best management practices in the farming. That's made a lot of difference, where they have sod planting and doing a lot of those type of things. And all of the modern equipment now, when they tell you they're going to put 50 pounds of fertilizer on an acre, that's what they put, because they got a computer that makes it go out there. It used to be if you put 50 in the drill and it didn't make it to the end of the acre, you put 10 more in there. So, you know, you didn't really know you were getting close to what you were getting. So all of these things play into that. And I think the sampling that we're doing is going to play into it, because there was some legislation passed several years ago to require the state to look at our sampling data. At one time, they didn't have to do that. They could look at their own. Well, they didn't have any, because they quit doing the sampling. Anyway, I'll get off of that. But and anybody that would like to go to an Upper Neuse River Basin meeting, just let me know. You'll be welcome to go.
So this $3.8 million, just for my clarity, is in addition to the money that we're spending on the Falls Lake watershed rules.
What that money will be spent for is those.
It's in addition. It's in addition to
retrofitting subdivisions.
So currently the money that we collect pays for the cost of implementing our stormwater regulations, and each year we generate a fund balance in that account. And so that $230,000 represents spending down that fund balance. And so we would have to increase our stormwater fee rate to get additional money to implement this fee. So yes, it's in addition to
the
what
Falls
we're
Lake
currently.
watershed. Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't mean to take so much
that's
time.
fine.
But it's very complicated,
Yeah.
frankly, if you don't know the truth about it, because you got federal regulations coming in there pushing everybody.
Okay. So any other discussions on the CIP for 2019? Okay.
Thank you.
Hearing none. I had, before we got into stormwater regulations, I had something that I wanted to talk about, and now I've forgotten about it. So maybe I'll think about it by the time it's ready for me to come back around.
Don't get no better, brother.
Around again. I know that we do have the Special Olympics is coming up in Person County, and I wish that our residents would look into volunteering and helping for that. Continue to think of our citizens of Person County when that's concerned. We're in the budget process that everybody's seen tonight, and if you have concerns or comments related to what we discussed tonight, the only way, as you guys have heard during our comments up here as a group, is to know from you guys is for you to call us, or either you to come up and stand in front of us and tell us how you feel about those things. So in my chairman's report, I would like to recommend that if you have any concerns or any ideas of how we go forward moving in this budget process, then please contact one of us five and let us know what your concerns are. There's a misconception that we know exactly what we're doing, and as you see tonight, there's not really a general consensus on everything that goes on up here. So let us know how you as the taxpayer feel about the different issues that we have before us, and please give us a call and discuss the budget process and how you feel we should spend your tax dollars, because ultimately it is your money that we're spending up here. And Russell's gonna come and get it. He's shown a good success rate over the last 2 years, I know, of getting about 98 and 99% of your money from you when we set a tax rate. And so if we tell him what it's gonna be, he's gonna get it for us. So with that, turn it over to Ms. York.
I don't have any report tonight, Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Jeffers.
Town hall tomorrow on mental health, 10 o'clock at the City Hall, Person County. And then last week, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, I was the only North Carolina commissioner they sent to discuss the Farm Bill down in Florida, and which is very important for the state of North Carolina. It's an $80 billion business, and it's I forget the number that Claudia gave us here in Person County, but it's just not about the farmers and digging in dirt. There's a lot of things in that, from trading policies, which also affects North Carolina. A lot of our programs that go on up there through DSS and through the health department. Rural development, I think we took advantage of some rural development funding to do our ambulances through a no interest or low interest type loan and an energy program. So when you talk to your congressman or your senator, please tell them get on it. We need that bill reauthorized. When I was chairman of the Rural Action Caucus in 2014, as a chair, that was one of my main focuses, was the reauthorization then, and so it's come back around. So
what's it called again? Rural?
The Farm Bill.
Farm Bill.
A whole lot of things on that Farm Bill.
Yeah. Commissioner Clayton.
I was gonna mention the town hall, but he got it, so I'm good.
Commissioner Purdy.
No report.
Commissioner Powell.
3 times on town hall. The new CEO of Cardinal Innovation Healthcare will be here tomorrow along with some of his staff. So if you're interested in how Cardinal is approaching the new mental health issues in the 20 county catchment area, then please come, 10 o'clock.
And I appreciate y'all letting it get back around to me. Us as commissioners have gotten several notes about Timberlake Meadows. I would ask that my county commissioners look over those emails that we have gotten, and hopefully we'll be able to discuss the issues that our residents have related to Timberlake Meadows, and it could be that it comes back to Lori as a issue that we put back on the agenda again. So
one more thing, we won't meet before then, is the 4-H Livestock Show, April 18th and 19th. So generally they'll send us out an email, but I sit on that board, but that'll be 18th, 19th in Orange County. And they always send us invitation, and we always have a pretty good group from Person County to go and show their livestock. So they have to have their livestock by a certain period. They raise it up until this show. They show it, and then they sell it at market price, and then they get the funding. The kids do. So they always invite us out, and they have pretty good barbecue and ice cream.
April 19th, 18th and 19th.
It's 2 days.
Next week.
It's over in Orange County.
Orange County.
I went last year.
All right. If there are no further comments, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I got a motion to adjourn. Any further comments? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion. Board's adjourned.
It's nice getting along with you. You were getting away here.